Freedom of speech is the most important right you as an American have. You were born with it, but that doesn't mean you can exercise it. Wynn Tompkins learned that the hard way recently. Tompkins is a recent high school graduate in Providence, Rhode Island. He decided to help his community by joining a program called City Year that helps inner city schools. City Year is affiliated with AmeriCorps. It receives federal funding. 2 months ago, for Martin Luther King Day, the program held a diversity workshop, and white program members were ordered to go to the basement of the building. They were told, Tompkins was told, that white people are a historically oppressive group, all of them, not just the ones who've oppressed others, and they needed to atone for that. Tompkins didn't buy it. He said he was just a 19-year-old, and he didn't want to feel guilty for things he didn't do, sins he didn't commit. Well, the next day, he was summoned by City Year by an administrator called Jenny Johnson. She berated him for his opinions. He recorded part of that meeting. Watch.
Just the same as someone who's born black should not feel shame for being black, someone who is born white should not feel shame for being white. I don't think that's an upsetting statement to make. I don't think that's being unreasonable.
Okay. Thank you. I disagree.
I disagree. She didn't explain why she disagreed or why he was wrong. She just fired him. Tompkins was dismissed from City Year. We contacted Johnson, who claimed that, quote, political beliefs have no bearing on volunteers. When we shared the recording, told her we actually had it on tape, she refused further comment, and we'll leave it to you to decide why. CNN has unearthed a brand new scandal at the Department of the Interior. Apparently, and we warn you, now is the time to ask small children to leave the room. Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke may have violated the most basic tenet of diversity and instead endorsed meritocratic hiring. He didn't do that in public, obviously. That's not allowed. But according to fresh reporting by CNN, on several occasions, Zinke told others in private that he cared less about diversity and more about, or quoting, having the right person for the job. Skills-based hiring. Talk about a bigoted throwback to a darker age. CNN led its breaking coverage of this with the ominous chyron, quote, Zinke angers many by saying it's more important to find the best people. End quote. Well, no wonder they were angry. The right person for the job in the federal government in 2018? Come on now. We called over to the Department of the Interior to check it out, and a spokeswoman there calmed our fears, and she assured us it's not true. Secretary Zinke absolutely does not hire people on the basis of their skills or their ability or their experience, whether they're good at the job. That would be insane. Instead, like everybody else in power, Zinke uses utterly irrelevant criteria like appearance to make the call. Thank heaven the diversity police can stand down tonight. Whew. Breathe easy, America. We told you last night about the scandal swirling around the Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke. According to new reporting by CNN, Zinke may once have suggested in private that he still believes in the meritocracy. That would make him the last person in power in this country who does, so of course it was highly controversial. Through a spokesman, though, Zinke denied that slander. Of course he doesn't believe in hiring on merit, on the basis of who's more qualified or who has the most relevant experience or on any of those bigoted skills-based criteria. At the Department of the Interior, they hire on the basis of genetics, on what people look like. Ryan Zinke believes in diversity, just like everybody else. But, of course, no one believed him. In an op-ed for CNN today, Andre Perry of the Brookings Institution said that Zinke's preference for qualified people could, quote, threaten the security of the country. Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey recently returned from his federal corruption trial. Congratulations, Bob. Went even further than that. In a statement, Menendez accused Zinke of trying to create a, quote, lily-white department. Well, there's obviously no worse crime than that, white departments being prima facie immoral, something a mad scientist thought up. And, of course, Menendez would know, himself being one of the single whitest members ever to serve in the U.S. Senate. He gets a pass on that, though, because whatever else you might say about Bob Menendez, he would never even consider hiring someone on the basis of relevant qualifications. Recently, we told you on this program about the wave of demographic change that has transformed the city of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. In the year 2000, Hazleton was less than 2% Hispanic. Today, thanks to mass immigration, Hazleton is majority Hispanic. More than half of the residents there speak a language other than English at home. Now, we got those numbers from a recent piece in National Geographic, which quoted lifelong Hazleton residents as saying they no longer recognized their own hometown. They didn't hate immigrants. Most Americans like immigrants. But this was too much change. In fewer than 20 years, the culture their parents and grandparents had built evaporated. They never asked for any of that. It was just imposed on them. They were bewildered, understandably. But not everyone understands or even cares. This morning, CNN ran a hit piece on that segment. Writer Ron Brownstein described it as, quote, an extraordinary screed against diversity, whatever that means. He suggested we were bigots for talking about the subject at all. This, of course, is how you bully people into being quiet while you permanently change their country. And usually it works because nobody wants the headache of that. But in this case, it's an important enough topic that we're going to go a little deeper on it. What happened in Hazleton is happening around the country. Neighborhoods transformed forever with no public debate. What's interesting is where this is not happening, in the neighborhoods where the people who make these decisions live. Here's some numbers. In Storm Lake, Iowa, only a tiny percentage of the population was foreign-born just 25 years ago. Now more than half of all residents of Storm Lake don't speak English at home. Hamtramck, Michigan had 2 Bangladeshi residents in 1990. Today, that city is majority Muslim. Fewer than 40% of the people who live there speak English at home. In his CNN piece, Ron Brownstein suggests this whole conversation is about white fear. Liberals often say that. Almost always they say that, probably to hide the truth of it, which is that the starkest effects of mass immigration don't take place in white neighborhoods. They take place where native-born African Americans live. For example, not so long ago, Compton, California, the famous Compton, was the largest black community west of the Mississippi. Today, only a third of Compton's population is African American. The rest is Hispanic. That's huge change. That's massive dislocation. Nobody talks about it. People like Ron Brownstein shout them into silence. But it's real, and for a lot of people who used to live there, it's traumatic. Now let's consider how the other half lives, the people who are making these decisions about immigration and demographic change. Are their neighborhoods changing like Hazleton and Storm Lake and Compton? Come on, you know the answer to that. LA County is now overwhelmingly Hispanic, but not upper-income Malibu, where the famous liberals live, where everybody supports these changes. Malibu is still 80% white, 87% white, actually. New York City, diverse place, of course, but not in Michael Bloomberg's neighborhood. His zip code is 82% white. It's less than 5% Hispanic. It's still 1985 where Michael Bloomberg lives. It probably always will be. That's the point. Same with Barack Obama's neighborhood here in Washington. That zip code is less than 8% Hispanic. Meanwhile, just across the river in the suburbs in Virginia, more Spanish speaking every year. Obama loves that. He just doesn't want to live near it. Diversity for thee, but not for me. You see how it works, no matter what Ron Brownstein tells you. Lou Barletta was the mayor of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. He was attacked, harshly attacked, for trying to fight changes to his city. Today he represents Pennsylvania in Congress, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming up.
Good to be here, Tucker.
So I just want to restate, because I don't think you can say it enough, that I think most people like immigrants because most immigrants are great, including the ones in your hometown. It's really a question of who gets to decide what the changes are and how big they are. And I always wondered, for a town like Hazleton, do the people who live there have any say in it at all?
No, they didn't have any say in it, Tucker, and I was at the forefront of that issue in Hazleton, where we saw a very sudden migration of newcomers coming into the city with no real explanation as to why it was happening and why Hazleton. And it is startling for a community to see a change like that. And to give you a good example, in the year 2000, English as the second language in the Hazleton area school district, the budget, it was $500. 5 years later, it was $1.5 million. So that just gives you a glimpse of how fast it happened.
So we're always told that when you bring in huge amounts of poor people from the third world with low levels of education, that you get much richer when you do that. That's the key to prosperity. No one who makes these decisions does it in their own neighborhood zones, but they're always saying it's going to make you richer. Has Hazleton become richer?
No, and quite the opposite. It becomes much more difficult when your income tax goes down. Our population grew by 50%, but our tax revenue stayed the same. And that's when we realized we not only had we had an illegal immigration problem on top of it all, but no, when people are coming in and are of the lower income or the lower end of the economic ladder, it's less tax money that you're getting, and it becomes more difficult to provide services.
So why do all the experts like Ron Brownstein at CNN say that you're a bigot if you have concerns? And they're telling you that you're richer and happier. Why won't you admit it?
Sure. I had this discussion. I was on a panel with Mayor Bloomberg at one time when he said, New York City's economy would crash if it didn't have illegal immigrants. Who would wash our dishes? Who would bus our tables? Who would clean our hotel rooms? But in small towns like Hazleton, where it's very transparent, it's an entire different story.
Yeah, it is. And I noticed that Michael Bloomberg's census tract in New York is like 5% Hispanic. So he's a hypocrite like the rest of them. You are not, though, Congressman.